USA.com.
Texas lawmakers are angry with Governor Greg Abbott's veto of a THC bill.
The ban on gummies, edibles, and beverages containing the active ingredient in marijuana was championed by Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, a fellow Republican to Governor Abbott. And Patrick is furious.
The governor of the state of Texas wants to legalize recreational marijuana in Texas.
In vetoing the measure, Governor Abbott said a ban would be unconstitutional. He's calling lawmakers back into special session to come up with regulations on those products. Jim Ryan, ABC News, Dallas.
TSA says it expects to screen 18.5 million travelers over the July 4th holiday, which runs from July 1st through the 7th. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos reportedly changing some wedding plans.
Amazon founder Jeff Bezos and fiancée Lauren Sanchez reportedly relocating one of the parties during the 3-day celebration to a more secure location amid concern about protests and paparazzi. Many Venetians hanging no space for Bezos signs, already furious at over-tourism in the city. The environmental group Greenpeace protesting the uber-rich. The mayor of Venice supporting the wedding, saying it will bring in millions for the city and local businesses.
ABC's Allison Cossack. Paleontologists say they found the fossils of a giant possum-like mammal in Texas's Big Bend National Park that date back 60 million years. Scientists say the new fossil is the largest marsupial about the size of a modern-day hedgehog found so far in North America from the Paleocene period. Dave Packer, ABC News.
Progressive presents Employee of the Month. Small Business Edition. Today's recipient from Michaela's Mobile Spa, Michaela. Michaela got a quick business insurance quote from Progressive and chose from over 30 customizable coverages. Sure, it helps she's her only employee and does literally everything. But while others would rest on their laurels, Michaela was hard at work saving big. So take that, hypothetical other employee who doesn't exist. Be your own Michaela. See if you could save in as little as 7 minutes at ProgressiveCommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Coverage is not available in all states or for all vehicles and coverage selections.
News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KVNU.
5:05 and with your KVNU News headlines on this Tuesday afternoon, I'm Will Theoray. Well, about this time yesterday, firefighters were battling a house fire in Cliffside that left a home almost completely destroyed. Now, the blaze was reported at 1691 Mount Logan Drive just after 4:50 p.m. Now, according to emergency radio communications, at the time, multiple people called 911 reporting the house was on fire. Now, the residents had reportedly gone back inside to try and locate pets and move vehicles away from the structure. Logan City Fire Marshal Craig Humphrey said when firefighters arrived on the scene, smoke was coming from the attic and flames were breaching the roof. Now, crews initially entered the home, but then had to evacuate to shift to a defensive strategy as the fire spread rapidly. Firefighters used a ladder truck and several hand lines to spray water on the flames. The roof partially collapsed, explained Humphreys, requiring firefighters to stay out of the home. Now, the fire produced a thick black plume of smoke that was visible throughout the area. Humphreys later confirmed, though, that all of the home's occupants were accounted for and safe. Now, the fire appears to have been in the attic of the home. The cause remains under investigation. In other news, an Orem father is facing series of charges after police say he was found asleep in a vehicle with his 4-year-old child in the front seat. Jesse Manuel Vigil, a 44-year-old, was arrested on Saturday. Now, according to court documents, police were called to an Orem convenience store parking lot Saturday night after an employee had claimed that a man was passed out in his vehicle with a small child in the car. Now, when officers arrived, they say they found Vigil with his head bent forward and appeared to be texting on his phone. Now, the child, meanwhile, a 4-year-old, according to police, had reached over and said "Dad" several times without Vigil reacting. Now, officers spoke with Vigil and said that his eyes were glassy and bloodshot. Vigil's speech also was allegedly slurred and slowed. Now, detectives ran Vigil through a field sobriety test and determined that he was under the influence of a drug and unsafe to drive. They also noted that the child's safety seat was not properly secured in the front seat. And a juvenile was arrested over the weekend Saturday night after police said he brandished a firearm during a community festival in South Ogden. Now, the incident occurred during the city's annual South Ogden Days celebration at Friendship Park. Now, South Ogden police said that they were patrolling the park grounds when they were notified about a group of juveniles who were seen carrying a firearm. Now, when police approached the group, one boy reportedly pulled a firearm out from his clothing. Police said the boy dropped the weapon after being confronted and then fled towards a crowd near the main concert stage. Now, officers chased after him and took him into custody. Well, it's been a nice afternoon as temperatures have been in the low 80s today. Tonight, we'll drop into the high 40s before we'll be back into the 80s for tomorrow, still with sunny skies continuing. Then low 90s beginning on Thursday. We'll stay in the 90s to finish off the week and head into the weekend. But by next Monday, some hotter temperatures coming as we could be in the high 90s to start out next week. And weather this hour is part of the news brought to you by Cardall's Insulation. You know, proper insulation will keep your home's temperature consistent, and it'll also make your home quieter. Call Cardall's Insulation at 755-5012. And I'm Will Theorite with your KVNU News headlines.
My neighbor stopped by the other day to borrow a torque wrench, and he said, "How does your house stay so cool in this heat?" I'll tell you what I told him. Call Cardall's Insulation and get your insulation checked. I'm serious. That's what I did, and I can't believe the difference it has made in our home. Or maybe you just want to insulate your garage or an attic. Call Cardall's. When you call Cardall's, make sure to ask them about the $1,200 tax credit. 755-5012. Or look them up online. Cardall's Insulation. 755-5012.
News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
Got sinus issues or trouble hearing? What about tonsil issues? Don't let discomfort hold you back. Intermountain Budge ENT Clinic is here to help. With expert care in ear, nose, and throat health, Dr. Matthew A. Wilson provides personalized treatments, including thyroid surgery, to get you feeling your best.
Budge ENT's doctors really listened to me and found a solution that works. I finally feel great again.
Breathe easier, hear clearer, and live better. Call Budge Clinic ENT today at 435-716-1420.
Photographers, take your skills to the next level with Bank of Utah's My Utah Photo Contest. Submit up to 3 original color photos of what Utah is to you. First place wins $500 and their photo featured on a billboard and Bank of Utah's annual calendar. Cash awards and calendar features will also go to second and third place and most votes. Show us what Utah is to you. Go to bankofutah.com/MyUtahContest to enter. That's bankofutah.com/MyUtahContest. Bank of Utah. Member FDIC.
Wednesday edition, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Will be breaking down the absolute latest on the ongoing Iran-Israel ceasefire or not and what is going on there. The big, beautiful bill, plus Buck.
Results from New York City's mayoral election. Did a communist just take control of the Big Apple de facto? We will discuss. That's all coming up on Clay and Buck.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM and 610 AM.
For the people, hour 2 of today's show. And basically, now, I mentioned this to our guest. I did not plan this. I knew that we had a sneak preview of Sutherland Institute's Defending Ideas today because Nick Dunn of Sutherland sends them along for our listeners ahead of them publishing the full episode each Tuesday. And you can watch the full episode this evening at SutherlandInstitute.org or listen to it, whichever you prefer. But we didn't plan it. It ended up being this perfect setup for our hour 2 guest kicking off the second hour of the show today. We have here in the studio with us Representative Jason Thompson. We had originally planned for him to join us last week alongside Frank Schofield, Superintendent of Logan Schools. But Rep. Thompson, you were stricken with the bronchitis, and bronchitis and radio don't go well together, I know. So we're glad we're able to get you back in the studio here on a different day. But it ended up kind of working out perfectly because, again, you probably didn't get a chance to hear it, but in a nutshell, Sutherland Institute, a conservative think tank out of Salt Lake, they're talking about similar themes that you touched on in a couple of op-eds. They're talking about, the fact that teachers are standing. In fact, their guest that Nick Dunn interviews, he said, I would stand in front of 40 students, and my job was to try and engage each one of them at least once a day, but at worst once a week. And he said, sometimes I just didn't do it. But he's now running a company where he's promoting artificial intelligence, very smart software in the classroom, but says, do this in a way that it doesn't become a distraction or something that further isolates students. He said, do this in a way that it just simply saves teachers time so they have more time to be present in the classroom. And it was just, it was just a unique conversation. But yeah, it was this perfect setup I kept thinking about your op-ed as I was listening to that recording play out. And for listeners, if you'd like to read Representative Thompson's op-ed, I've linked to it again on our Facebook page in the Deseret News. Short version of this, and you're here to expand on it. But you're basically saying chronic absenteeism in Utah schools is a bigger problem than people think, just numerically, but it's also a bigger problem, big picture, than people think. And you say this is not something the legislature can solve. This is not something some harsh administrative rule can solve. We can't punish kids out of this really any more than we already are. This is a community issue. This is something where we all need to have a light bulb moment, right? Is that a fair summary?
It's 100% right. I mean, you just look at it objectively. Yeah, if you're punitive, you're going to push kids away. Sure. You're going to push parents away. So I think the big approach is it's got to be a cultural issue. It's got to be a community neighborhood issue. We've got to put our arms around each other and encourage each other. And when we see each other struggling and kids not getting to school, we need to ask some questions sometimes. Hey, what's going on? How can I help? And we need to do what we can to get this turned around because the numbers are not great.
Sure. And you talk about some of the things you've learned in your op-ed. You talk about some of the reasons you've learned that certain kids were hitting above a certain percentage of missed school. And I know from my own experience. So I was that kid. I was I told this story last week while Frank was here, but I had an aunt that was undergoing a medical treatment, and it wasn't a serious thing at the time. But my mom, it was her sister, would drive her down, and this would happen one Monday each month. And I knew that after they went to the appointment with the doctor in Salt Lake, they went to the mall, they went shopping, they went and got food. And I would have the flu that Monday every month. Just, oh, Mom, I don't feel good. I don't think I should go to school this day. And sometimes she always knew, but sometimes she'd let me go. Sometimes she wouldn't. We're not talking about that, right? We're talking about something that's become a bit of a pattern.
It's definitely become a pattern. The concern is, you look at the numbers in 2011 nationwide. We had 10% average chronic absenteeism. So chronic absenteeism is defined as missing 10% of school days in a school year. So if 180 school days, you're missing 18. So that's the definition that's commonly used for chronic absenteeism. That
makes sense.
Yeah. So there's a lot of problems that are leading. I think COVID. A lot of people are arguing that COVID caused this chronic absenteeism problem. It didn't. The numbers were 10% in 2011.
Sure.
You go to 2019, and we were at 18% chronic absenteeism. This is pre-COVID. We had gone up 8% nationwide.
Okay.
So there's already something going on.
So the trend existed.
It existed prior to COVID. Yep. And then we get to 2022, 2023, and we see that number spike to an average of 38% nationwide. That was just coming right out of COVID. It was a difficult time for everyone. So COVID exacerbated an issue that was already there, but COVID did not cause.
Not the root.
It's not the root. It did not. It's not the root cause of chronic absenteeism. There's a lot of studies right now being done on chronic absenteeism, trying to get to the bottom of it. And I don't know how they do this, but they've isolated it to 27 main causes for chronic absenteeism. That's a relatively large number. I don't know how you get to 27, but there's 27 that have a statistical significance of having an impact on absenteeism.
Sure.
And they can all be basically summarized within four main categories. So number one, a barrier. Right. So a barrier that's in place that keeps kids from getting to school, whether that's health issues, mental health needs, a lack of transportation. That's huge.
Sure.
It's a huge percentage. Housing instability and homelessness. And then family responsibilities. I was talking to a class at one of our schools here in Cache Valley This was about a month ago. Came in, was talking about what I do on the Hill in the legislature, and had a kid ask me a great question in the beginning. Really, a handsome kid, looked like he was well prepared for school. And to my surprise, by the end of class, he was passed out on his desk. And I was wondering,
exhausted.
Man, am I that boring, or what's going on? I thought I was engaging the class. The teacher came up to me afterwards and I didn't acknowledge it. I didn't do anything to bring this on. And the teacher came up and put his arm on my shoulder and said, Jason, that you have to excuse that kid. He works with his family so that they can make a living, and he will work until 2 or 3 in the morning some nights.
Wow.
And so that is a reality. What I think is one of the biggest issues with chronic absenteeism, it is we are not talking about it. We do not understand as a community how big of an issue it is.
Sure.
When I hear from teachers and administrators,
I know I was surprised when I read your op-ed.
Yeah. I'm gonna give you a number real quick. Superintendent Schofield, we are so blessed to have that man in Cache Valley and Logan City School District. He's an amazing leader. He's a visionary. I could say the same thing for Todd McKee. Just amazing people leading our school districts here.
Those are 2 great examples, because one thing they both have in common is they will experiment.
Yeah.
They will take risks and say, okay, what? And I think sometimes that's what we're afraid to do in education, to rock any boat of any, and I get it. But it seems that maybe this is a time when you're talking kids not actually being there in the first place for up to 10% of the year, it might be time to rock the boat a little bit. Right?
Yeah. I'm going to share a number with the audience real quick. K through 6 in Logan City School District, the chronic absenteeism rate this last year was 58%.
Wow.
K through 6, 58%.
I don't even know how you get through the school year. And I'm saying this is, I'm not sitting here pretending to be the best student. I was told to not take an AP test in high school because I'd been to that class so few times. So I was that student, but I don't know how you get through the grade with that much missing.
Yeah. It's, and some of the statistics are just staggering. I want to share a couple others just to get them out there, and maybe we can have a little discussion about them. But students that are chronically absent in 8th grade are 7.5 times more likely to drop out.
Makes sense. Because they get higher on, it becomes too challenging.
Yep.
Because they didn't pick it up in the grade they should have.
That's right. And they get behind, they lose confidence, they view themselves different as other students, and there's a whole other host of issues there. But the data is not lying, right?
Sure.
And outside of 8th grade, if you're chronically absent between 8th grade and 12th grade, any other year other than 8th grade, you're 5.5 times more likely to drop out.
That is wild to think about. And also, if you bring this back to the possibility, at least, that this is sort of a societal attitude behind this, both, not pointing the finger at parents, I'm trying not to, at least, not pointing the finger at students, not pointing the finger at teachers or administrators, but collectively our entire attitude has become kind of a gigantic, you can make it up. But can you really? I mean, that's kind of the question here, and that's the question Representative Thompson asks in his op-ed. I've linked to this on our Facebook page. We're also going to connect this with a follow-up that Rep. Thompson wrote, also in the Deseret News, in which he asks an important question that is directly connected to this. But not only how are we teaching, but what are we teaching might be a part of this. So our guest here in the studio, Representative Jason Thompson, talking chronic absenteeism and the future of education, not just here in Utah, but even nationally. This is a problem in other states as well. And we'll get back to it right after this.
It started out as free.
But then they said it would only be a few cents a day.
What you're hearing is real, and it may be happening to you.
I pay for streaming video, then the cloud storage, then streaming audio. Where does it end?
It ended up being a lot every month.
This is the sound of nickel and diming syndrome. It's a real thing.
It is a real thing.
I just want to hear my music. Is that so wrong?
There is hope for millions of people there's radio.
Radio?
Radio. With 0 down and 0 per month. Radio delivers all the news, music, and entertainment you want, when you want it, for free. No usernames, passwords, or Wi-Fi connections required.
Here's my card number. It's 735.
Shh. Don't speak. When you listen to local radio, you'll never need that.
This is so wonderful.
Yes, it is. The cure for nickel and diming syndrome.
Oh, I could use a hug.
It's radio. No subscription required.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful they saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
The Above and Beyond Salute.
Whoa. Is this Jake Martin by chance?
It is.
Someone contacted us anonymously and told us how you're a paralegal. Is that right?
Yeah. In my undergrad, I lived in a travel trailer for a while. Seeing the kind of the disparities that people that aren't fortunate enough to have like proper housing, and I want to advocate for the person that can't advocate for themselves.
Very cool. We just wanted to recognize you for being a great member of our community and give you a $40 gift card to Firehouse Subs.
Oh, thank you.
The Above and Beyond Salute on News Talk KVNU.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Representative Jason Thompson here in the studio with us today talking about education, specifically chronic absenteeism. But as you've noticed in just the first bit of our conversation here, it goes, this goes broadly beyond test scores. This goes beyond graduation rates. It connects to all of that. But this actually comes down to, the purpose of education in a way, and talking about students who are missing, 10% of the school year. You mentioned Rep. Thompson in 8th grade, they are more likely not to graduate at all. Because most of us have an experience where, a certain year got difficult for some reason or another. I have a friend whose family was going through some stuff, loss of job and even temporary homelessness in our 7th grade. We were the same age. None of us knew this at the time. And so because of that, he never learned how to multiply and divide fractions. And then we ended up in a physics class in our junior year of high school together. And he almost left high school over it because he didn't want to admit he didn't know how to do that math that we learned in 7th grade. And that was the first light bulb moment for me when I realized, oh, okay, this is kind of important that you follow the steps and go through that. But if teachers are overwhelmed time-wise, if students are overwhelmed because of maybe the world they live in now, I say this all the time, I don't know if I'd want to be a parent right now in this always connected world. The amount of challenges you have to, or the amount of influences pulling at your child. But then people will say to me, it's never been any different. It's just a different device doing it now. It used to be the television. Now it's the cell phone, things like that. My point here, I guess, is that it all gets overwhelming, I think, for policymakers because it comes down to, at a certain point, okay, what can we do? But you're pretty limited as a policymaker when it comes to chronic absenteeism or technology in the classroom. You can set guidelines, but how each student responds to it is differently. So is that frustrating when you start to learn of the problems and realize there isn't a law you can pass to fix it?
Quite frankly, it's really frustrating. I think, for any of us that would deal with something really hard and challenging and frustrating, it would be nice to if you could just pass a law and solve it. But that's not what our government was formed to do. Sure. And it's my belief that we have a tremendous opportunity as a community to come together and to find a solution to this. And is there some legislative things? I think that there's probably some legislative things.
Sure. And
there are probably things where the legislature is maybe in the way. Not that we need something new, but we maybe need to take something away or correct something that may be there. Okay. That can free schools up to address this issue a little bit better. But really, this is a community. It's a cultural issue. I'm spending a tremendous amount of time on trying to understand and tackle this issue. And I would say that 85% of what I'm planning and coordinating as a community effort for the coming school year is non-legislative. I would say probably 90 to 95% actually is non-legislative. So it's bringing the community together. It's bringing all of our different denominations of faith together, bringing our business leaders together, bringing parents together, teachers, administrators, bringing everybody together, number one, to understand the scope of the issue. Number two,
because that does seem missing, right? The scope.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's amazing to me when I talk to people about how many of our kids are not in school, how shocked people are.
Right, yeah,
they're shocked. They can't believe the numbers.
I was just reading your op-ed. I was shocked.
Yeah.
by some of the statistics you throw out in that.
So number one, we've got to get people informed to a point that they're not shocked, to where they recognize, hey, this is an issue we need to address. And then we need to have a cohesive thing that we do to come together and talk about the issue and work to find solutions. But we look at school. I mean, I'll give you another example of an issue that I'm concerned with. Right, I'm talking about chronic absenteeism with some teachers, and I have a teacher say, "Well, what are you going to do about the sports team?" And I'm not going to say which one, about the sports team that during the middle of a trimester is leaving and going on a sports tournament, missing a week of school.
Sure.
Right. So, and then looking at summers and how busy summers are. Normally, I go to Virginia for 2 months to spend time with my in-laws, and I actually come back to work, and my family stays out there. Well, we've had to cut that down to 3 weeks now because our kids are so busy.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot going on.
So there's a lot going on, and so another trend that we're seeing is that families are choosing to take vacations during the school year because the summers are just as busy as the school year now. And quite frankly, they can find cheaper flights, or they can find, go to some tourist destination where it might be a little bit less busy or whatever. We
always went to Disneyland in March because of the temperature, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's an escape from the cold. But
I can also say that was a stressful time, and I'm sure was for the teacher as well. But I remember backpacks full of books in the back of the car as we drove to California. And I was expected to have my assignments. I got the pass on turning them in on time. I could turn them in at the end of the week when we got back, but they had to be done. And it actually made when we did that a few years in a row, it made the last few weeks of school a little more difficult for me. So I can imagine if this is happening multiple times a year for a student, or even worse, 2 or 3 weeks scattered throughout the school year.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about here, right? Is that's kind of the landscape we're looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. And then look at the burden it places on the teacher, when you have, if you, let's use the K through 6 in Logan City, for example. If you have 58% of your kids chronically absent, how much time are you spending instead of moving forward with your lesson plans, trying to get kids caught up?
Catching up,
right? And then we're talking about disengagement and connection. One of the most important things for these kids and these teachers is connection. And when a teacher is they're doing everything they can do all day to meet the needs of kids that have been absent, that are present, that are some that are high achievers, some that are struggling to achieve, and so forth and so on. One of the first things that I think could go or would go if it were me is the connection part's emotionally exhausting. Like what capacity do we expect our teachers to have? It's
how realistic.
It's almost superhuman.
Yeah, it's not realistic to, we ask similar things, I think, of police officers, and I admire them because I would get fired so fast for that first mouthy traffic stop. But that's what we ask of them, right? We ask them to go into the classroom and not make a mistake, be superhuman, have endless amounts of energy to connect with every student and combat all the distractions. And meanwhile, I won't tell anyone if you nod or shake your head in agreement, but you've got parents texting kids throughout the school day. You've got maybe parents not realizing, not really adding it up and realizing how many times they've pulled their kid out or let their kid skip. And sometimes I think a few $100,000 for a public service campaign from the legislature to guilt people into this community responsibility idea is what caught me in your op-ed. If we could maybe get people to realize, hey, if your kid's missing too much school, if you have a good reason, great. Talk to administrators, work something out in advance that's easier for everyone involved, and it happens, and everyone will understand. But if this is just a kind of an oversight, you don't realize how often your kid is out, helping people realize that is impacting every other child in the classroom seems to be missing from the conversation too.
100%. Yeah, it's the bigger picture. It's the overall picture. It's not just, and that's one of the four categories or buckets that these reasons for chronic absenteeism fall under. But misconceptions is huge.
Yeah.
Right. Absences are only a problem if they're unexcused, or missing 2 days per month doesn't affect learning, or sure. A student assume if they stay home because they have a symptom of an illness, so a minor cough, right? There's no fever, there's no anything else. We're now keeping kids home for every reason under the sun, when it's, maybe we need to scrutinize that a little bit more and say, hey, let's send them off to school. And if there's a problem, they go to the nurse, we grab them, we bring them home. We want all of our kids to be healthy and things like that. But if we're looking for reasons to keep kids out of school, there's ample reasons that we can do that.
I imagine a kid could help you find one every day.
Oh, I'm sure they can.
if you really gave them that loose rein, they would probably, have a reason every day why they've got to be late. Or our guest here in the studio, again, is Representative Jason Thompson. We're talking chronic absenteeism. I've linked to two different op-eds by Representative Thompson published in the Deseret News the last 2 weeks consecutively. One talking about chronic absenteeism with some data that will blow your mind on how prevalent this is in Utah, but also discussing this as a community issue, something we all need to get involved in, and maybe even collectively change our attitude towards the importance of butts in chairs in the classroom with the teacher there with some time and flexibility to engage with every student as often as possible. And that ties in with another op-ed that Rep. Thompson sort of followed up with, in which you discuss, what we're teaching, what the future holds. And I love this tag below the opinion headline. In an age when machines can produce an essay, design a logo, or generate code on command, isn't it time to ask, what should we be teaching? It connects to all of this. So we'll keep the conversation going with Representative Thompson here in the studio right after these headlines with KVNU's Will Feel Right.
Well, thank you, Jason. A 37-year-old Logan man has been sentenced to prison for molesting several young girls years ago. Cesar Orozco Rubio was taken into custody by court bailiffs yesterday after apologizing to the victims while being sentenced in Logan's First District Court. Now, according to prosecutors, a woman contacted Logan City police officers back in 2022, reporting years of sexual abuse by Orozco Rubio, who was a close family member. Now, the abuse occurred for around 6 years after the defendant had moved to Logan from Mexico. Now, the then 27-year-old victim told police that the abuse had started slowly when she was around 9 years old, but then progressed to around several times a week for several years until she was 15. Now, during sentencing yesterday, a victim's advocate read a letter from one of the women sexually abused by Orozco Rubio. She asked the court to sentence the defendant to prison, writing how the abuse had huge impacts on her life, leaving her with suicidal thoughts and feeling betrayed and gross. Now, through a Spanish interpreter, Orozco Rubio apologized for his poor choices. He asked the court for mercy so that he could continue raising his family. Now, Orozco Rubio is sentenced to 2 consecutive terms of 3 years to life in the Utah State Correctional Facility, meaning he won't be eligible for parole until the year 2031. In other news, the suspect in a sexual assault investigation in Eagle Mountain was shot and killed yesterday by SWAT teams after he allegedly pointed a gun at them. Now, the Utah County Sheriff's Office said they had learned of an aggravated sexual assault incident that had occurred between Sunday night and early Monday morning in Eagle Mountain. Now, their special victims unit investigated and discovered that the victim had various injuries, including apparent strangulation, and was treated at a local hospital. Now, police obtained a search warrant and sent a SWAT team to the suspect's home. When SWAT entered the home, the suspect was armed with a handgun. Officials said the officers ordered him to drop the gun and surrender, but he refused and instead pointed the firearm at them. That's when the SWAT team used lethal force. According to a press release, the suspect died at the scene despite life-saving efforts by officers and paramedics. And Wallet Hub has named Utah as the 4th best state in the country for summer road trips, and Idaho was ranked 7th. Now, the personal finance website compared all 50 states across 32 factors like cost, road safety, and attractions. Now, Utah earned high marks for access to scenic byways, ranking 3rd, and placed 6th for fewest traffic fatalities per mile traveled. Now, while hotel costs and car travel per person were average, the state also stood out for its road trip-friendly qualities. Now, experts say the road trips are more appealing this year since gas prices have been lower. Of course, for Cache Valley drivers with nearby highlights like Logan Canyon and Bear Lake, it makes Utah a premier destination for hitting the road this summer. Well, temperatures have been in the low 80s today, and now tonight we'll drop into the high 40s and then be back into the 80s for tomorrow, with sunny skies continuing through the rest of the week as temperatures will gradually get back up into the low 90s and will stay in the low 90s through the weekend before high 90s possibly for the first of next week. And bringing you our weather this hour as part of the news is Triton Medical Supply and Transportation. They're a partner for all your medical needs, especially if you're looking for top quality medical soft goods like incontinence supplies or oxygen needs. Trust Triton Medical Supply and Transportation. They're online at mytritonsupply.com. And with your KVNU local news update here at the bottom of the hour, I'm Will Fiore.
ABC News, I'm Dave Packer. Completely obliterated. That was President Trump's description of what happened to the Iranian nuclear facilities bombed by the U.S., but ABC's Mary Bruce.
But tonight, sources tell us a preliminary Pentagon report indicates at least 2 of the Iranian nuclear facilities targeted were not completely destroyed, and that Iran's program was only set back a few months.
Place is demolished.
Oil prices today lower, stocks closing higher, hopes that the worst of the Israel-Iran conflict is over and that crude will keep on flowing. Both the prosecution and defense rest in the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Closing arguments expected tomorrow. Daniel Park, the accused co-conspirator of the Palm Springs, California fertility clinic bombing, found dead in prison today. Details into his death not yet released. Temperatures pushing 100 as extreme heat blanketed the Northeast. Newark, New Jersey, Boston, New York City, all flirting with 100. This is ABC News.
Make laundry a snap with the large load washers and dryers at Mount Logan Laundry. Rather than 8 to 10 loads at home, get the job done in 1 or 2 with their 55 or 80-pound washers and 80-pound dryers that are perfect for sleeping bags, comforters, and other big items. Mount Logan Laundry has free Wi-Fi and drop-off service, plus they're open until midnight. Mount Logan Laundry really is the cleanest spot in town. Find them at 5th East and 9th North in Logan or in Brigham City on the corner of 1st East and 7th South.
Hi, this is Chris Wilson at Wilson Motor Company. It's that time of year to celebrate our 82nd anniversary with our biggest sales event of the year. We have reduced prices on over 300 Ford, Lincoln, Nissan, and pre-owned vehicles, including over 50 F-150s and 35 Super Duties in stock and coming. We have discounts as high as $12,000 and interest rates as low as 0% for 60 months. Check our inventory online at wilsonmotor.com.
Wilson Motor Company. We make car buying easy.
Tired of that patch of dirt you call a patio? Ready to impress the neighbors and your in-laws? Introducing you, the Weekend Warrior. Thanks to Cast-A-Lite Tile and Masonry. With easy-to-install outdoor pavers and expert advice, you'll go from, I have no idea what I'm doing, to check out my backyard oasis in no time. They'll teach you how to do it right without the head-scratching or YouTube rabbit holes. Cast-A-Lite. Go where the pros go. And now, where you go too.
News for the people. Representative Jason Thompson here in the studio with us. We're talking chronic absenteeism, but kind of a 30,000-foot view of the whole thing, in that, as Rep. Thompson writes in an op-ed in the Deseret News recently, This is not necessarily something that can be, the policymakers can't just pass a law and make this end. You can't just, increase penalties for truancy. I mean, you could, but it's not going to solve the problem. Rep. Thompson writes, this is a community issue. This is something that each one of us, both regardless of whether you're a current parent, about to be a parent, or maybe your kids have already aged out of the system and are on in their own lives, it's all of us are going to have to recognize, one, that absenteeism is a growing problem in Utah schools, and two, that we don't seem to recognize that. We aren't talking about this maybe as much as we should. And as we've discussed, for those just tuning in, absenteeism doesn't only hurt the individual student who misses a lot of school. We're talking 10% of the school year in some cases, and more in others. It also hurts every other student in the class, because that's more of the teacher's time that's taken up catching that student up, and less time they have to be as one-on-one as possible with a class that's already 35 to 40 students. I don't know any parent that would learn of all of this that you've written about, Representative Thompson, and say, I'm okay with that. I feel like anyone made aware of the statistics, made aware of the trends, made aware of the impacts, any parent is going to say, okay, we need to pay more attention to this. So I love that you're out here talking about it, and then you're expanding on this, taking it further. Is this a planned ongoing conversation? Because you have a follow-up op-ed here about what we're teaching as well, and how that might relate to how engaged kids are or aren't in classrooms. This has become your thing, sort of?
Yeah, I came from the business world, business community, and thought when I got in the legislature that I'd be economic development, but I have been so driven to education and looking at education and looking at how fast things are changing.
Really fast.
It's unbelievably fast to a point that this is becoming a passion for me to not just from a policy perspective, but from just a community perspective, to say, hey, let's just ask some questions. Let's ask some questions. And I'm, I get some flack for asking some of these questions, but in the second op-ed that you're talking about, one of the questions I ask is, are we teaching what we should be teaching and need to be teaching in the classroom now that is preparing our children for the future they're inheriting?
Yeah.
And the point that I'm trying to make is, yes, reading, writing, arithmetic, those are foundational core elements of our education that are super important.
Sure.
But when the research shows that high school graduates and people going on into a career field, when they're asked about emotional intelligence, when they're asked about leadership, when they're asked about teamwork and engagement, they overwhelmingly feel underprepared.
Sure.
And so
they got all the right test scores.
Oh, yeah.
But they don't know how to conduct themselves in the workforce with coworkers and managers in a confident way.
Yep, I think that's a safe assumption from what the research is showing. But I think we take it one step further. You look at coders, for example, web coders. 90% of that industry has been wiped out in the past year.
Yeah.
90% wiped out by
And
AI.
5 years ago, that was the career track.
Yep.
Everyone was talking about it.
Yep.
You've got to be in software development. Now it's done.
Yeah.
It's done.
Yep.
That's how rapidly things change.
They are. So my question that I'm asking is, if we're putting our eye on a mark and that mark is moving faster than it's ever moved before, by the time we get through a 4-year get through a high school education or whatever, how far has that mark moved?
Sure.
Especially in education, when we tend to be slow moving and slow to pivot. So the question that I'm just asking is, hey, are we actively preparing in all the appropriate ways our students for the future they're inheriting? And and I'm asking this as a rhetorical question. That was the purpose.
Sure.
in the op-ed, was just to say, hey, we should look at this. Utah, we are innovative in almost every aspect. in our state. We're just such great leaders in the United States. But I think we need to start asking some serious questions there, and we need to look and say, hey, what if there is some things that we can be doing differently and introducing into the classroom? What are those things, and how are they going to benefit these kids to where they're more confident for the world they're inheriting? Because I'll tell you, if we can't have leaders that are coming out of their education and entering the workforce and entering the world, and they can't lead people through the continued change that we're having.
Yeah, they're unprepared.
They're unprepared.
We've basically set them up for early failure in life.
That's or some major struggles, right? So I'm just asking the rhetorical question. I spent a lot of time just thinking about it. And,
I think it's such an important question. You include in the op-ed, you talk about, I remember way back. I sound like an old man every time I say that, but I think it was 2010 or 11. And I'm not faulting the legislature for this. I was there and even talked to some of the lobbyists who were also talking to lawmakers, but this was a global thing. This wasn't a Utah thing. This wasn't a Utah legislature thing. But the mentality, the attitude at the time was basically, how quickly can we get an iPad or a tablet in every student's hand? Because then their education experience will be better, their outcomes will be better, they'll be more connected to each other. And you can look back on that now and think, oh, we were so wrong to think that. Now, thankfully, we never went there. It stalled out before we went there, expense-wise. But that, and again, I'm not faulting the legislature because everyone thought this. I thought it. Global leaders thought it. Every state was on board with this. And now we realize technology, when you're not careful, can actually be isolating. And you talk about that in the op-ed. You said disconnection and the mental health challenges that come along with that. That's also part of what you're including in being prepared for the real world here, right?
That's correct, 100%. Again, COVID didn't cause this, but it perpetuated it.
Sure.
But disconnection, and I think as a community, even in my church congregation and other aspects of my life, I still see people struggling to connect. I see people struggling to get by now more than just get by, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking
More
finances.
challenges.
I'm just talking
just
emotionally.
to get through the week.
Just to get through the week.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think it's important for us to recognize that disconnection has been a major issue in our society. You add to disconnection a algorithm-induced connection that we get with social media, and we get all these things. We start to have some major problems. Major problems when we're mixing the two. And so disconnection, mental health issues. If you look at the mental health statistics, especially among students, it's concerning.
Yeah.
We need to come together, have some of these conversations in a public forum. They're hard conversations to have. It's not fun. And it's easy to be embarrassed about it, that, hey, I feel blue. I feel down. I'm struggling in this way. We need to do a better job of coming together, recognizing when people may be struggling, putting our arm around them, helping them to find the resources that they can to just navigate what they're going through and be a more connected society. And unfortunately, our political climate doesn't make that easier. We're more polarized than we've ever been.
And I do think social media amplifies that. You mentioned algorithms, but if you, I think Twitter's the last one that'll let you do it. You can switch between algorithm, Twitter, and what they call reverse chronological timeline, which is where you're just seeing tweets as they're posted based on the time they were posted. And one is so much more hateful than the other in the political world.
Yeah.
And that is not an accident. The algorithm knows that hate, that anger is going to keep you scrolling longer, and that's what you'll see more ads.
That's right.
Instagram's doing the same thing to you. Facebook's doing the same thing to you. Now throw kids in the mix here, and they're being exposed to that as well. I love this. You talk about the need to develop within our education systems, these leadership development skills need to be a bigger part of educational goals. And but at the same time, you're acknowledging this isn't going to be as simple as just, well, everybody go delete your teen's Instagram account. That might help temporarily if your teen has a problem, but that's not going to be an an overall solution to what you're talking about here, right? When you're talking isolation, when you're talking outcomes, when you're talking, I hate to put it in these terms because it sounds so action movie, but we're talking survival skills here.
Yeah.
Turning off your teens' Instagram.
Can I give another word for it?
Okay, sure.
Human skills.
Okay. Yeah.
So survival skills, but
survival implies a panic.
But survival skills. I think I used the word survival skills actually in my op-ed. But really, when I say human skills, I'm talking about we have to get back to the human elements of empathy, compassion, of connection. Sure. Of friendships. We have kids that are sitting in their bedrooms playing video games or on social media scrolling and not being with other kids.
Which takes us back to the importance of being in the classroom.
That's right. Yep. It's an opportunity for connection. It's an opportunity for kids to learn. It's an opportunity for growth and development and confidence to be developed, which takes time. Everybody's on their own timeline for when they, I barely graduated high school, and it was my teachers that one particular guidance counselor that made it possible for me to graduate high school and to see my potential that I couldn't see in myself.
Similar experience for me.
Right.
It was one teacher and then a guilt trip from a guidance counselor that knew some family members of mine. But yeah, that's all it takes sometimes. And I was what you would call a very connected kid. I was very social. I'm old enough that social media didn't exist at the time. The internet did, but social media wasn't around. But I still struggled in those ways because I didn't feel until late in high school a part of the school community. Now, Frank Schofield talks about that a lot as well. The importance of the students feeling like they're part of a community, that the school is their school. And this is Representative Thompson again is taking a broad approach here, but this encompasses everything, and it's fascinating to talk about. And we'll keep talking about it. We've got a few more minutes left on the other side of this quick break.
Summer's here, and it's time to make your outdoor projects shine. Bear River Valley Co-op in Corinne has everything you need. From topsoil or fertilizer to medium bark and mulch, they have lawn and garden supplies that will keep your yard looking its best. Need to build or repair a fence? They've got fencing lumber and sturdy railroad ties. Tackling a bigger project? Rent their equipment. Choose from 2 skidsters, 2 mini track hoes, 2 dump trailers, and a variety of skidster attachments. Visit Bear River Valley Co-op in Corinne today. More information at brvalleycoop.com.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Wednesday on This Morning, America's First News. Oil markets are on edge after Iran floated the idea of closing the Strait of Hormuz, a passage critical for global oil leaving the Persian Gulf. Also, got a friend with a second job? The share of Americans with a side hustle is rising. We'll examine whether it's a recession indicator. And a key change for shoppers who use Buy Now, Pay Later. Wednesday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. I'm jumping right back in here because we've only got 4 minutes left in the hour. And man, in hindsight, we could have done a full show, both hours and more on this. But talking with Representative Jason Thompson broadly about chronic absenteeism, connection, technology in the classroom, what we're teaching, how we're preparing our kids, not just from a technical standpoint, are they prepared for, college or heading into the career they want when they graduate high school, but also a leadership standpoint, are they prepared to navigate the world, to deal with having a boss, to deal with the things that can pop up just being connected in your neighborhood, or are we preparing them to isolate and scroll through social media? These are really great questions to be asking. And so, Representative Thompson, such an unfair question, but how do you wrap this up? What can people do if they want? Is this a time to just say, go learn more about this? Is that kind of the point we're at right now?
Yeah, I'll give a little bit of a preface to some things that I'm currently working with both of our school districts in Cache County to come up with a community initiative to address chronic absenteeism. I think one of the big things is we need to start having conversations. We got to have conversations with our kids. We got to have conversations with other parents. We've got great intending parents. There's some schools where you'll have half of a kindergarten class or a first grade class that's checked out at different times so that they can go to a gathering of parents and kids that are doing some activity, right? That's probably a good, wholesome activity, but it's still disrupting. It's still disruptive, and it's still adding to the issue, right? So
makes sense.
So it's just I think it's good to have good conversations to understand. Hey, what are the numbers at my school? What are my kids seeing in their classrooms? And then talk as a family. How can we help with so-and-so who's in my community who I know is struggling? How can we help them? How can we support them?
Frank mentioned that last week. He even said sometimes parents sitting down with their child and saying, why don't you want to go to school?
Yeah.
And getting that conversation started. And that conversation is important, right?
It is. Yeah. I mean, you will unveil many different reasons. Maybe there's bullying going on. Sure. Maybe somebody's losing confidence because they got behind and they didn't want to tell their parents, or they didn't want to let somebody know. There's all kinds of reasons. Maybe kids they don't feel like they have a meaningful relationship with their teacher, or something was said and we're just not navigating things as good as we can. And then it just has the kid not want to be in the classroom.
And sometimes it's something really dumb. In my first grade year, I skipped a week of school. They called my parents. Is everything okay? And it was just my first grade teacher was loud.
Oh.
She intimidated me. She had a loud voice, and I was just coming out of kindergarten. I was just a little kid. I mean, it was just that. And they sat me down. I met her and talked to her. We became friends, and then I went to school.
Yeah.
But my mom had no idea. I was getting off the bus, walking up to an aunt's house until it was time to get back on the bus and ride home. And it was just because she talked loud.
It can be something as simple as that. But I'll tell you this, Jason. I've been on a tour. I've toured every school in Logan City School District.
Wow.
I will be touring every school in Cache County School District at the start of the new year.
Wow.
But one of the things that I've learned, and I'm so grateful for it, is these teachers love these kids. And we're leaving these teachers scratching their head saying, how in the world am I expected to do my job if I don't feel like I'm being supported with getting these kids to school?
Sure.
And that's the question we've got to answer. How can we support them to do what they're there to do?
And honestly unfair to put that on the teachers as well, where they don't control as much as they probably need to solve that issue.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Representative Thompson, thank you for your time today. We'll obviously be revisiting